Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good start to your week. We're just going to take a few moments to briefly talk about qualitative and mixed method designs because we are moving into that portion of our class. Your test grades are in, and everyone did really well on the test. So pleased about that. It seems that you are understanding those research concepts and research designs. So now we're moving into the qualitative realm, which some feel is kind of take a breath and they feel relieved because they think, oh, we're not dealing with all of those quantitative terms that may be difficult to understand and the complicated mathematics and those kind of things. But qualitative research has its own set of challenges as well. And I think the text does a really nice job of talking about the strengths and limitations and also talking about specifically the type of researchers that we have to be in order to do good qualitative work. So the first chapter, chapter 9, is on case study and really talks about mixed methods design. So there will be some qualitative and quantitative pieces in a case study. Um, and recognizing that within qualitative designs in the case study that we're talking about and also in grounded theory, we are going to be looking at a variety of data sources. We're going to be looking at possibly notes and interviews and journals, possibly even drawings. There can be a wide variety of ways that we can gather data within a qualitative study. So that's one piece that is definitely different. Another piece is that we are looking at the natural context of the participants or of the situation that we are studying. So we're not applying a specific intervention, but we are looking at that intervention within the context that it is naturally occurring. So when we're talking about a qualitative study, we're interested in the how and the why. And there's a great chart in your book. So this is on page 192, table 10.1, and it talks about the difference, gives us a good visual of the difference between qualitative and quantitative studies. So I think this really helps us to understand the way that we're looking at the information and the way that we're looking at the data and how that differs. So I would definitely keep this in mind as you are moving forward and helping you to understand the data that you'll be interested in our qualitative piece of our class. Also, in chapter 9, table 9.2 talks about the steps for conducting a case study. Not that you're necessarily going to be doing that tomorrow, but understanding those steps will help you as you are reading the research to understand, again, the why and the how. Why did the researchers do things the way that they did, and how does that help to support or supplement your specific question that you are asking for your lit review? Um, Also, we still are interested in reliability and validity within the qualitative study. We're not just throwing that out the window. Reliability looks different in a qualitative sense because we're looking at actually we are replicating the study, but we're looking at finding examples that replicate that study rather than, again, actually applying a specific intervention in order to show replication. Um, and the same with external validity. We want to be able to replicate the study with additional cases. So those terms still matter. Those are still important and still things that as you're reading your research, you need to be aware of in the strengths and limitations of the specific articles that you are finding. Um, for grounded theory, I want you to recognize that the researcher in grounded theory, so we're now looking at it from a different perspective. In our quantitative design, we have a theory and we're fitting the research into the theory, or attempting to fit the research into the hypothesis that we have about that theory. When we're looking at a grounded theory design, we are looking at the data that we are collecting, and we are deciding how that forms our theory. So it's a different way to, I'm all about the hands. It's a different way to look at the data. And with grounded theory, we want to be able to find a theory that applies to the information that we're gathering, and then be able again to replicate that as well. So remember that for your research questions, you have 4 qualitative, 4 quantitative, 1 program evaluation, and 1 mixed methods. And some of you have already turned in a mixed methods, and many of you were able to find a program evaluation. And remember, if you couldn't find a program evaluation, you can do 2 mixed methods. So keep that in mind. I also want to make sure that as we're moving forward, you are really working hard to find articles that you're going to be able to use specifically in your lit review. I know that there were some of the articles that we were looking for that may kind of have applied, but maybe didn't really give you the information you were looking for in order to answer your PICO question. We're getting close to the end of the semester. So if you haven't found articles that specifically are going to support your PICO question, now's the time. We need to make sure that the articles that we are finding, you're going to be able to use, because if that's not the case, then when you start your lit review, you're basically starting all over again. And that's not what you want to do. So moving forward for this article, and for the remainder of the articles that we're going to be doing, you will be using, rather than PICO, we're going to be using Spider. So I wanted to share a page, and I'll also put this within your within Blackboard in the learning materials section. But for our Spider question, we're going to be specifically talking about or answering questions related to the sample, which this is very similar to what we did with our PICO. The topic of the research. So this is could be an intervention, but this is the area of interest, the phenomenon of interest. So it's not something we're applying, but it is something that we are considering for the purposes of our study. This is what we're interested in. The design. So here is where I'm going to want to see that you understand the actual research design, and how you're collecting that data. So again, we talked about there's a lot of different ways that we can collect data. That's what I want to see here, is how that's happening within the study. The outcome of the study, this is actually your last question in your Blackboard, and we'll look at that. And then here's where the research comes in. And so what I've noticed in some of the PICO questions is that you were giving me how it related to your lit review, but you weren't really explaining how the research related. In other words, why was that relevant research? This is a research class. So yes, I want you to understand how it relates to your question, but I also want to see that you're understanding the research terminology and the types of research. So I am aware that we have not studied all of these yet. All we have done so far is case study and grounded theory. So if you are looking up, trying to find some qualitative design research, and you put those 2 terms in, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to understand, because we haven't really talked about all of these yet. However, I do need you in this section to be sure that you're explaining to me that you know what is grounded theory. How do you know that this specific type of research was a grounded theory study? So that's what I want to see there. It doesn't need to be a long explanation, but it does need to be a couple of sentences so that I know what you know. There's more specifics here about what we just discussed, that you can look back on as we're moving forward. But I also wanted to show you with our with our article reviews moving forward, we will be using Spider, as I said. So I wanted to show you what that looks like actually in Blackboard. So our APA, that's the same. Our sample, pretty similar. Phenomenon of interest. Again, what is the study interested in looking at? What are we trying to determine? The design elements, how is the information collected? And in most cases, oops, I spelled groups wrong. In most cases, this is going to be multiple ways that the data will be collected. And then, as I mentioned here, please make sure that you give me some sort of explanation that helps me understand why you think this was the type of research that you say it is. And then the 2 to 3 sentences to discuss how your article relates to your lit review activities. So very similar, but we're now on to our qualitative, moving into the second half of our research. So as you have questions, please let me know. If we need to have office hours, again, I'm available on Thursday at 6, but I will look for you to send an email if you're interested in coming to office hours. Hope you have a great week, and please reach out if I can be of any help.